Hello and welcome to this latest Arizona Capital Times morning scoop. This one is called AZ Opportunity Building Arizona's Workforce for a Stronger Future. I'm Steve Goldstein. And just to let you know before we get started, some of the messages we'll be talking about. Public higher education remains the best investment an individual student or state can make in our shared future. Data shows that those with a higher education degree live longer, make significantly more money throughout his or her career, and have a better quality of life. Higher education also plays a valuable role in Arizona's economy by equipping Arizonans with skills for high demand industries and fostering innovation for economic growth. Our state's workforce development will continue to thrive and build a brighter future for all. That's why the Arizona Board of Regents is prioritizing a new initiative called AZ Opportunity that would create opportunities for every Arizonans, ensuring the state remains a beacon of innovation and addresses challenges facing our state. Through AZ Opportunity's 5 pillars of progress, key focus areas include education for all, healthcare excellence, innovation and growth, funding restoration, and future-ready campuses. Investing in higher education opens doors for all, helping students achieve their dreams, and drives innovation for a vibrant economy. And the panelists with us to discuss these and more detailed issues are Greg Brewster, Regent for the Arizona Board of Regents, Danny Seiden, President and CEO of the Arizona Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and Jaime Molera, co-founder and partner at Molera Alvarez. Gentlemen, thank you all for joining us this morning. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Also want to remind those who are with us live right now to please send in questions throughout the course of the discussion. We'll get to as many as we can. We'll try to sprinkle them in throughout, and then we'll also leave a little bit of time at the end. Now, at this point, I want to have each of the panelists talk for, a minute or so, just introduce us a little bit and why you're interested in AZ Opportunity and what it can provide. And Regent Brewster, we'll start with you, please.
Thank you, Steve. I'm grateful to have this discussion today about an issue that truly impacts the vitality of our economy in Arizona, and therefore the quality of life we all enjoy. Beyond my role with the Board of Regents, I've spent 42 years in the healthcare industry, working for companies that manufacture and distribute healthcare supplies and equipment. Arizona is one of the fastest growing states in the nation, and we must ensure we have the workforce for this future. In large part, that starts with our public universities. And through Arizona Opportunity, we are striving to increase awareness of the importance of higher education as a door to opportunity for every student in this state, as well as a path towards prosperity that creates an Arizona economy that is competitive.
Thank you. Jaime Molera, Arizona Opportunity. What does it mean for you?
Well, first off, Steve, it's always great to be on with you and with these distinguished gentlemen. It's an honor to be a part of this. So, I think we're fortunate in Arizona. We have a very competitive state. I mean, from our low tax structures, our by and large, our low regulatory governments that we enjoy, certainly a high quality of life. But Arizona Opportunity and what the regents are proposing, I think, would augment this in a very dramatic and beneficial way. Because if we can start to be more targeted and provide educational attainment that's more meaningful, not just for the student, but also for the workforce and for companies that are going to need the skill levels of our workforce to increase so that we can continue to grow Arizona. I think that gives us a very strong advantage, not just in our region, but throughout the country and in the world. And when we augment that with everything that we're doing with our university system, which is outstanding, then I think we have a great future ahead.
Thank you, Jaime. Danny Seiden, what are your thoughts on Arizona Opportunity?
Again, thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy our conversations, and could not be a more relevant time to be talking about what we're talking about this morning. What does this mean to us? I mean, the Arizona legislature and the governor recently apportioned a grant to the Arizona Chamber Foundation to come up with an economic development plan focused on the next 10 years and what's going to be happening in Arizona. And we've commissioned study after study that shows Arizona is going to continue to grow. We're going to have another 2 million in our population over the next 2 decades, putting us again in the top 5 in the country. And we got here by being very strategic about our planning around workforce. These big announcements that everyone's getting to hear every day about TSMC and the $165 billion they're putting in, we wouldn't have gotten those had we not had a plan from the Regents before with the new economy initiative. And so I look at Arizona Opportunity as what's next. And every state should be focused on always what's next and planning for the future and thinking about the future rather than being reactive. And that's what this is. This is forward thinking. This is relevant. This will keep us competitive with our states and really in the world.
Gentlemen, thanks for laying that groundwork. Regent Brewster, you get the lucky chance of starting off with our first big question to discuss. Arizona's lagging higher education degree rates have been well documented. We know that can limit both individual opportunity and our state's ability to compete. At the same time, Arizona at this point ranks near the bottom in state support for higher education, even as the public universities are being asked to do a lot more, including educating more students, training the next generation of teachers, taking care of healthcare providers. What's the status right now in terms of numbers or context for college degree attainment right now in Arizona?
It's a great question, and the status, frankly, Steve, and to everybody, is concerning. Arizona falls well below the national average in higher education attainment. And that is a serious, that has serious implications, not just for individuals, but for the entire economy, our state's economy. So consider these facts. Less than half of Arizona high school graduates are pursuing any education after high school, any education after high school. Imagine a class of 1,000 ninth graders today. 6 years after high school, only 178 will have earned a bachelor's degree. It's pretty staggering. Arizona currently has demand for 68,000 bachelor degrees annually, but we have a shortage of about 26,500 simply by reaching the U.S. average for educational attainment. Arizona would benefit by nearly $5 billion in additional state and local revenues over the next 10 years. Our universities are doing more than ever, serving over 250,000 students, offering more programs, expanding into healthcare and workforce training, but doing so with fewer resources. This isn't sustainable. If we want to increase attainment and complete, we have to reinvest and reinvest strategically.
We're going to get to more of the specifics about Arizona Opportunity, but Jaime, I want to turn to you on that because there have been ideas talked about before. What's going to take it? What will it take to move the needle in a positive direction, an impactful direction on this? Because it's not as though people haven't tried something before. We all know, most of us at least, know the importance of higher education in Arizona.
Well, I think we also have to look at it in terms of how our K-12 system is structured and how do we create opportunities and incentives for students to understand that there are pathways and realistic pathways. And one of the things I like to talk about, and I think the Helios Foundation in Arizona does a very good job of this, with their CEO and good friend of mine, Paul Luna. We've talked about this at length, where we shouldn't bifurcate this notion of workforce attainment and higher education attainment. Because by and large, a lot of those things come together. If you have a student who's going through our CTE programs, for instance, and is going through advanced manufacturing, and they're going through opportunities to get college credits, which would lead to either certification or licensure in that particular field, 9 times out of 10, that student won't just be in that field and just work in that and never go to college. It allows them to understand that once they get those college credits, it really opens the door to more and better things. And again, this is not just for the student, but it's also for the companies that need that workforce. So that's some of the things we need to look at, Steve, is how do we incentivize and how do we provide opportunities, really starting in middle school and then in high school, where whether it's dual enrollment, whether it's concurrent enrollment, whether it's IB programs, there's a lot of things that I think we can do a better job of. And unfortunately, we've gone backwards in that realm, but I think Arizona Opportunity gives us the foundation on how we can build on that again.
Danny, Jaime gave me a good segue there to talk about workforce and competitiveness. How is all this affecting Arizona's business community, the folks you talk to, the CEOs, the leaders? What are you hearing about their concern when it comes to this college attainment number?
Well, I mean, again, it's not something that we are overly proud of to see our attainment number, lower than that. But I do have to say something very positive. When we have these conversations, when we travel, I just came back from Taiwan. I'll be at the Paris Air Show, largest, aerospace defense convention in the world. when we're there, it's known that right now Arizona State University has the largest class of engineers in the country. I mean, so we have done a good job of reverse engineering. I give the Arizona Board of Regents a lot of credit. They've reverse engineered what the talent needs are, what we can brag upon. So when we are overseas, when we are meeting with these companies looking to invest billions, that ASU, engineer talking point, it comes up all the time. It's flashed on signs. It's, you want to go see that flash on a billboard in Taiwan, you will. People know what we're doing when it comes to producing talent. So we know what the formula is. We do need to do a better job of investing. We need to, again, convince some people that it's time to reinvest in higher ed, that higher ed is the engine that drives our economy, that has the strongest return on investment. And again, we're working on doing a better job making that case. Jaime laid out a lot of the initiatives, a lot of the different ideas that are out there, starting at the K-12 level, CTEs, JTEDs, that's all part of it. The community colleges, our workforce accelerators. We've been doing a really good job, again, of building a better ecosystem around what attainment means in education and making sure no one falls through the gaps. But again, we cannot fail to think ahead and invest in higher ed. If you look at every state, you talk about competitiveness. I'll just say this again, the states that are winning, and I would put North Carolina, Utah, all the high growth states, Arizona, what's the one common thread? We have focused higher education initiatives as part of our economic development plan. And those states have done it, again and again and again. And then you talk about a country like Singapore. They're very successful at this, and they focused on higher ed, and they actually focused on, I'll add on Jaime, he said K through 12. They do a lot of adult learning and future skill training, so that upskilling is always there as well. People who are thinking about the future, countries, states, those are the ones who are going to win the coming talent war.
Brewster, why don't you climb on that, but also add to it, how does the Arizona Opportunity Plan translate investment into the outcomes people are looking for, whether it's in healthcare or technology, even affordability?
Yeah, there's some great points there about being a master learner. And again, our universities we're preparing, students of all ages to be master learners. So I love what Danny brought to the table there. That is so important for us going forward. The urgency, for the Arizona Opportunity Platform, it really stems around the gap between what our public universities are being asked to deliver and the resources they are being given to do that. We know that increasing the number of Arizonans with college degrees would significantly grow our state's economy. But to do that, we need to reverse decades-long decline in public investment. Not K through 12, that's important, but K through 18, K through grade. We have got to get this state moving forward in its investment processes. Right now, Arizona ranks 46th in state support for higher education. Per student funding has been cut by over half since 2008. These are the facts. Meanwhile, states like Texas and Florida and Georgia, just as Danny was talking about, are prioritizing and investing heavily in their public universities, giving them an edge for economic growth and really market competitiveness over Arizona. Without investment, we're risking losing competitive economic opportunities in Arizona versus these states, no question. Despite that, I would say we've expanded student enrollment, launched new academic programs, and taken on major workforce challenges in healthcare and education. Long-term, stable investment is what allows universities to plan, grow, and deliver consistent results. And that's what we've been lacking here in Arizona. Besides the value of each dollar, we are not getting commitments for longer-term funding that really helps us plan. Arizona Opportunity outlines exactly where the investment should go. Restoring core funding, funding health initiatives like Arizona Healthy Tomorrow, supporting infrastructure for research and innovation, and expanding financial aid for students. These aren't nice to haves. These are what's required to build a competitive Arizona.
That's a very interesting point. I want to get to a couple of these viewer questions, but I also want to follow up on the idea of targeted investment decisions. How important is it something like Arizona Promise, Teachers Academy, Arizona Opportunity overall? I think when people see a whole big package, some people get nervous about that. We've seen that even with initiatives that people vote on. So how important is it to make sure that people know that we've determined what can work and what should work if we target these investment decisions?
Well, I've always said that accountability in our public education system really should be hand in hand, right? We really should be able to look at things that are effective and replicate them and grow them. But at the same time, things that are not effective, we should be very vigorous and about eliminating things that are not helpful. One of the things, Steve, that I've talked a lot about is that, yes, we absolutely need, and I think Regent Brewster is absolutely right, and the need for investments and targeted investments, especially when workforce attainment, is absolutely critical. But we also need to look at some of the things that we're doing that, in my opinion, are mission creep particularly in the K-12 system. Being more focused on core academic attainment, in my opinion, is absolutely critical. Whether a student is going to absolutely decided they're going to move on to the higher education pathway or even a workforce pathway. As we know, students tend to change their ideas and mind as to what they're going to do. But if they have that core academic foundation, then it allows them to do a myriad of things. And so that's some of the things we also need to look at as part of this, is absolutely being more focused and honest about what kind of resources it's going to take, but also how do we use those resources in a meaningful way that makes the educational attainment more meaningful for that student, so that they're going to want to continue this pathway, whatever it might be.
Danny, can I have you follow up on that? What are your thoughts on what Jaime said, but also targeted investments, strategic investments?
Again, I think it's one of the reasons I like this plan so much. It is important right now to kind of renew the public's faith in higher ed and what that promise is and what that payoff is, because there's a lot of, we all know this right now. There's a lot of narratives that can take off about what's happening in higher ed or what's happening in with education in America. And whether some of it's true or some of it is just rumor, it doesn't even matter anymore. So I think we have to be very specific with the story we're telling about where our dollars are going, what we're choosing to invest in, and why it matters. We are training the workforce, of the future. We are meeting the demands of the global economy right now here in Arizona. We're now we're just about to be the world's leader in semiconductors. We're definitely the nation's leader in semiconductors, and it's targeted investment that got us there and will continue to keep us there. So again, it's very important. And there's a lot that I really like inside this plan that fits in with a lot of the conversation we've already had. I mean, talking about the alumni labs and the support for things like that, because again, students, when they're in school, need to start thinking about what their career is and where they're going to go next. And it really intertwines the active business community with the universities, pairs people up, helps get them in kind of the right lane and finding their passion and finding what's going to make sense for them and getting them trained up so that the university system is delivering on its promise of a better future, of a higher paying job. And so again, I love this conversation. Target investment is so important. It's so important to be specific right now with what we're doing to kind of battle any of those false narratives that are out there. I mean, if you listen to those narratives, you believe no one's going to college anymore. No one wants to go to college anymore because they're just training people in the most random pop culture. It's just not true. Arizona's, attendance was up. It has survived all this. People are attending their graduations. They've done a phenomenal job here in Arizona, and we need to do a better job telling that story. And we do it by being specific on how we are investing our money. And when we make these requests, it's a commitment. It's a commitment two ways. I would love to see long-term dedicated funding that is 100% stable and out of the hands of some people who can change that, so we can become dependable and reliable on things.
So I promise all of you, I will try to thread the needle on avoiding the overstep into politics here. So
that's tough for me. That's half my job.
So tread as you will on this, but we know that obviously the entire country went through a horrible recession 15 years ago, the Great Recession. We also know the pandemic caused a lot of upheaval. But what led to less of a commitment overall at the state level to higher education funding? And obviously what we're talking about now is there a way to have other pathways? Is there a way to get those reinvestments to return, at least to some extent? So we talk about that a little bit, again, without it being one side or the other. What happened there? Was there a misperception of what the universities were doing? And is something about Arizona Opportunity something about changing that message? Again, we don't have to spend too much time on this, but I'd like our viewers to get some ideas about where that came from. I don't know, Regent Brewster, Jaime, Danny, I don't know who wants to start there.
Danny, go ahead. You look like you got something right on the tip of your tongue.
Thanks I was going to say, I think it's a Jaime question as a former state superintendent. He could jump right off, but I'll share what I viewed as what has happened. And I think for a long time now, we've watched prior to COVID, we watched our legislature begin to become more critical of what they were seeing the universities doing, because again, they would latch on to, you know, a relatively small narrative around something in the liberal arts side of things, and lose track of what the university was accomplishing in these core functions that Jaime mentioned. But I'll say this, even throughout that, let me tell you, the legislature was always willing to fund specific plans. They started to fund more on the outcome-based side. And that was kind of a progression we saw. And that's where the New Economy Initiative came in before. The legislature was like, we're going to make some cuts to universities because we don't like these other stories. But hey, if you want to talk about building the largest engineering class at ASU, we'll support that. You want to build these tech parks down at U of A, we'll support that. We were able to pass huge bond initiatives, you know, when Governor Ducey was there, to help support some of these other schools. And we have to do that again. That's how we're going to get our med school for ASU downtown, is getting speed bonds. So again, I think we've been watching this progression for a long time now of, I would say, legislatures are looking to fund outcomes as opposed to inputs. And so you have to know what the outcome is. And that's why, again, I promise there's no script here. I like what this opportunity plan is, because it's based on outcomes. It's saying, here's what we are going to do. Here's our goals, and judge us by these goals and these metrics. And that's how you get funding out of a legislature like we have today. When dollars are tight, you got to be specific with the metrics you want to be judged by. So I hope I avoided the politics of it, and just say it's been a trend that's been happening, you know, much longer than before COVID, which is why the New Economy Initiative arose. But this legislature, and we are a very interesting one, has always shown the willingness to fund dedicated outputs when you can say what they are and be very clear with it.
I mean, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, the one thing I think Danny's spot on, but I do think we need to look at some of the things that people are critical of, and again, it's not focused on what we really do, but they'll take certain examples that occur in our universities, and then they'll magnify them to, well, this is what goes on every single day, and it's not focused on academic achievement. It's more about social policy and social engineering. And that's unfortunate, because, you know, the things that our universities have been able to do, particularly being able to be the engine of our economies by and large, has been incredibly powerful. If you look at what happened in the early 2000s, when we launched the biomedical structure here, and when the expansion of the University of Arizona's medical school up to Phoenix, and then the partnership with Arizona State University, what they've done, Northern Arizona University with their integrated healthcare attainments, it's been incredibly powerful. I mean, if you look at how that has helped Arizona become more competitive in so many areas, particularly in the biosciences. I mean, it was minuscule back in the late 1990s to now, where we're very competitive. And you see the biomedical corridor is just an impressive, incredible site. So those are some of the things I think we need to do a better job of, is highlighting the things that make sense. Because unfortunately, I don't know if you know this, Steve, but there's a lot of politics involved in at the Arizona legislature.
I'm a virgin on that. I mean, no, I had no idea.
I think, but with business leaders, with like the Arizona Chamber, the Phoenix Chamber, Greater Phoenix Leadership, continuing to pound on the fact that these things actually make a difference, and working hand in hand with ABOR, with Arizona Opportunity, I think we can start to make the case where legislators won't politicize it as much anymore, and hopefully look at the things that actually will help our economy grow and prosper.
Yeah, Steve,
that's great. The outcomes. Yeah. Go ahead.
I would just add on, something both gentlemen have said, and it goes back to Danny. I will tell you that the Board of Regents is absolutely interested in a return on investment. This isn't money come our way and it'll get spent, without any kind of oversight or certainly return. Those discussions are ready at any time. The board is got a business mindset. Every dollar in has to produce something coming back. And we know, being in business, not everything you invest in hits. But I'll promise you, the universities have a great track record of taking funds and doing things that produce outcomes and returns on that investment. And again, somewhere along the line, I think in Arizona, just maybe touching political, we kind of went K through 12. We got in this battle for funding to raise what needed to be raised, but we kind of then at the loss for higher education quit funding. at the levels that we had up to 2009. So I don't know, if it's timing relative to the recession, to COVID, but we got to get back on track. And I really do want everybody to understand the Board of Regents is a return on investment board. It isn't just, a political appointee, Senate confirmed. Let's see how we can go lobby and get more money for these programs. It is a return on investment board.
The ROI is a great example, Regent Bristol. Let me stick with you on that. Let's go specifically on one of the Arizona Opportunity Initiatives, and that's Arizona Healthy Tomorrow, because both Jaime and Danny mentioned what the state and what the state universities are trying to do as it relates to healthcare workforce, ASU building a new medical school. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. So what are the universities going to be able to do potentially with Arizona Opportunity to help meet these growing healthcare needs?
And Steve, it's a great question because, again, long before I came on this board, I've got to give out a shout to the board, specifically Fred Duvall, Regent Duvall, who's had this passion around looking at Arizona and really challenging the status quo for how we deliver healthcare, and how can the universities, beyond just the U of A model, plug in and really support what is lagging here in Arizona. So this is not something that's new. This is something that's been growing in intensity with the board. It's been growing in intensity with the university. And again, healthcare is one of Arizona's most urgent workforce challenges. We have over 3 million Arizonas with limited access to care and critical shortages across hospitals, especially in rural areas, tribal nation areas. We just don't get there with healthcare. Arizona Health Tomorrow is comprehensive, university-led statewide effort to address critical workforce shortages. We've got physicians, nurses, and other healthcare professionals that we desperately need. Today, more than 1 in 3 Arizona hospitals face a critical staffing shortage. So our goal obviously has to be to look at all those areas of healthcare, employment, and figure out ways to put more into the system, and more importantly, keep them there. Arizona Health Tomorrow is going to leverage combined resources and expertise at Arizona State University, Northern Arizona University, and University of Arizona to address these workforce development challenges, no question, while accelerating, bioscience, life science, and research, all critical outcomes that are required when you think healthcare. The Arizona Healthy Tomorrow is a solution we think is new medical schools that will increase medical school graduates. There are bold moves here for Arizona State and down the road, Northern Arizona, to complement what we have at the U of A. These are investments, and right now we are not getting those seed investments out of our budget dollars. And again, without long-term state support, we won't meet the demand for the doctors that we need, the nurses that we need, and the behavioral practitioners that we need. This is about those professionals, getting more of them trained in Arizona hospitals, keeping them here in Arizona, and delivering for the citizens of Arizona a better healthcare network than they have today.
Andy, is that the area where it almost seems the most obvious as an ROI? I'm considering this state has really been, when Jaime mentioned the biomed stuff, there's so much in this area. Even during the recession, we saw that the only area that consistently stayed with employment levels was the healthcare industry in Arizona. How much do you think this part of Arizona Opportunity focused on health is going to really help things?
I think it's extremely helpful. I mean, healthcare is roughly a third of Arizona's economy. And given what's happening right now in DC, and given what happened last night in DC in terms of federal funding, it has never been more important to be very clever with our strategies on how we build our healthcare workforce here, how we can fund them, how we can educate them, because there's going to be less federal dollars coming in. One of the reasons why it's been so stable is there's always been a lot more federal dollars. And we already have a lower reimbursement rate for some of our physicians than, I would say, lesser markets like Denver. So we have to be better than ever at doing this. So building a new medical school, using speed bonds to do that, a proven tool that's been successful and is funded partially by the lottery. I mean, we have to use all the tools at our advantage here in Arizona to compete on this. And there is an ROI on this. And with Mayo Clinic's now almost largest footprint is now in Arizona with what they've been doing with their corridor up there. And that's another partnership with ASU. It's clear that this pays off. It's clear that it matters. It contributes to our quality of life. It contributes to our aging population that we have in Arizona. There's a demand, and we're going to rise to meet that. And this is all part of that. So yeah, absolutely. The ROI on healthcare is clear. I would say it's clear on everything laid out in Arizona Opportunity. Is very intentional. Every one of the components of that plan, you could tie to a very specific ROI. Now, again, healthcare, very, very important topic right now. Again, given what's happening in DC, it's now more important than ever to invest wisely at the state level to make sure we maximize our resources.
You already made a point about the biomedical situation, but I want to ask you, is there anything else that stands out to you in ROI in terms of what Arizona Opportunity could bring?
I'm sorry, Steve, you cut out for a second. You're asking me?
So, yeah, I'm asking about as you already mentioned biomed. So anything else in the healthcare industry or something else with Arizona Opportunity that stands out for you?
Well, I guess it's more the big picture of how these investments actually pay off long term. So we talked a little bit about, we mentioned the engineering program. And if you look at what Arizona State in particular has done around that, it's been fairly amazing. And that's been a massive reason why you're seeing such an influx of semiconductor companies coming into our market, because there's a ready-made marketplace, or at least it's easier for us to compete and demonstrate that we have people that can help them grow and prosper. But that's just one area. And that's one of the things I think that the regions are trying to look at is how do we do this and how do we replicate that amongst all these other industries? And that's where I think the opportunity and challenges lie. I think we could, and now going back to the K-12 examples, I think we can do a better job of demonstrating how those students that are getting those kinds of incentives with college credit attainment then become prioritized for things like the Promise Scholarship. That's something I would like to see, because they were demonstrated that they have acumen in being able to get college credit. And I think if we can build on that, I think there's some, I don't want to say simple, but I think the common sense things that we can do as a state that can build on this and really make an impact for our economy.
We're about halfway through the conversation. Good time to reset if you're just joining us right now. This is the Arizona Capital Times Morning Scoop on Arizona Opportunity, building Arizona's workforce for a stronger future. Our distinguished panelists are Greg Brewster, Regent of the Arizona Board of Regents, Danny Seiden, who's President and CEO of the Arizona Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and Jaime Malera, co-founder and partner of Malera Alvarez, also former state superintendent of public instruction. Gentlemen, interesting, I'm not going to frame this as a question, but one of our viewers, Joseph, talks about, I'm not sure if this is a direct comparison, but to put things into context, based on a report that he had cited, total yearly economic output of the university space sciences operation estimated roughly $560 million, whereas the economic impact of the Super Bowl, $600 million. No one on this panel is going to say we don't need the Super Bowl. But to me, that's interesting context to say that we're so focused on what this one lead up major event, international event, and yet if we look at some of the numbers based on what the economic impact of what the universities are doing, interesting comparison. I don't know, Regent Brewster, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a great question and a great comparison, because I think we're so caught up today in event-based outcomes. And again, I'm all for positive outcomes, but the work, the grind to get to, outcomes in higher education isn't just, hey, let's have a Super Bowl, like the Super Bowl coming to the state. Everybody knows the economic impact it's going to have, but it takes a couple years of really focusing on and looking at the blueprint that we had to host other Super Bowls to make sure that we maximize every opportunity for every business associated with that event. Well, the same is true in the university world. These things are events that you see the finish line for, but you've got to work all the way through to get to that finish line. And I think the point just made is fantastic. The outcomes are millions, if not billions of dollars in incremental value for the state of Arizona. But it takes money up front, time and planning to hit that strategic. You got to always lead with strategy, not structure. And I think the universities are very, very focused on that outcome.
And Steve, as much as we would like, I'd like to just mention to remind folks that we don't get the Super Bowl every year. We're lucky to get it hopefully once every 10 years. But these kinds of investments, that every single year, that amount of money that's being put back into our economy. So it's not just $560 million. It's money that can then be reapplied to other areas. It's the brain capital that allows us to have folks that are going to bring in even more investments in the future. So it really does, it's exponential when we start to look at this. And that's what we need to be focused on. And again, I think we need to do a better job of capturing that data so that we can start to make those kinds of arguments, not just with the legislature, but I think also with the public, to show them that these things really do make a difference for our state.
Yeah, I would just add, let Joseph know the legislature is not keen on funding big events for Super Bowls either. So we have to work hard. We have to work hard to get anything for the Super Bowl, which, by the way, when the Super Bowl comes, there's always a panel with our university presidents in front of all the visiting CEOs who come in town, who then brag upon all the great stats and things we're producing here. So it's part of the whole ecosystem. But that's correct. I mean, the universities are worth more than a Super Bowl every single year to our economy. And again, it's long term. I mean, just this past year, and we haven't really gotten into this yet, that we're awarded a state-of-the-art R&D facility coming out of Washington in regards to what we've done with semiconductor advanced packaging. That's huge. To move into that R&D space, we could not do that without the universities, and that's something that changes the DNA of your state's economy. I mean, Arizona was a construction, real estate economy. Now we're advanced tech manufacturing. The next evolution is to get more into the R&D space. So again, it would not happen without those programs at the university. So it's huge. It's huge.
I think that's extreme. Richard, you want to comment on that? The idea that with the CHIPS Act and how ASU in particular, but obviously the whole university system will take advantage of this at some point with partnerships, that those are things that actually generated a lot of headlines, as they should have, because of the not only the money that it can bring in for the state, but the impact that the state can have internationally by having some of these facilities.
There's no question this outcome, and again, thanks for a governor and Governor Ducey and other legislators having the vision to say, hey, this is something that could work here. But I'll guarantee you, like Danny just said, at that table were the universities. They were there to talk about what was going to be needed. So again, it's not done in a vacuum. It's done with a broad perspective, and the universities are at that table. And I'm proud that the universities are at that table. That shows a willingness to look at and see top to bottom what's going to be required to make that industry investment go for the state, go for those companies, and again, ultimately go for the citizens of Arizona. And that's where I try to leave it. It's like these are things that are good for the citizens of Arizona. It builds on our popularity as a state. I laugh about the five C's. Now I say we have 6 C's. We've added chips. Well, people catch on to that and they think, wow, this is great. It is. But you know what? It can't be the end all be all. We've got to keep moving our economy forward. And again, I'll tell you, it's going to be with the universities, hand in hand with business and government to make that triangle work for the citizens of Arizona. No question.
I mean, you want to jump in on that?
No, I think Regent said it very well. But we also need to look at, Steve, just overarching policy that I think could be more beneficial. Again, I go back to making it meaningful for students and making sure that we have opportunities, not just for students to come into Arizona and benefit from our university system, but really how do we start to grow for Arizona citizens and Arizona students, and they start to see the pathway to get these kinds of opportunities. And unfortunately, I think we have not done as good of a job in providing those kinds of incentives for students, or making it obvious that we have tremendous opportunities that they could take advantage of. So that's something that I think we need to work on. And Arizona Opportunity provides, I think, a very good game plan on how we can start to make that case. And to me, that's going to be critical for us, because if you have more students that understand that there are meaningful ways to not just get a diploma or get a degree, but really have a meaningful career in front of them that they want to contribute into our state, then that's something that can be very, very powerful for us. And all of these things that we've done from an economic policy standpoint can be mixed with this stronger educational attainment policies. And I think it would be a tremendous 1-2 punch.
Yeah, and Danny, I don't want to take us too far off track, but there's an important, once people attain that college degree, you want to retain them in Arizona, especially if they're accomplishing great things. Does that all fit into this package too?
That's 100% true. And I know Jaime knows this for a fact that, you go back about 17 years in Arizona, 18 years, and that was a big thing. We were not retaining our talent. You walk into a class and you would say, how many of you plan on staying in Arizona when you get done, whether it was U of A, ASU, NAU? very few hands went up. I mean, they were all applying jobs. You know, our business leaders' children are leaving the state to go find jobs, and that was not a good look for us. And that's not happening anymore. You know, Arizona's been winning the job creation announcement. We're outpacing the national average on creating high-paying jobs. So, you know, we're doing a better job of creating the vacancies. But Jaime is absolutely right. We need to kind of renew that promise to a student, right? You come, you work hard, you know, it's all about merit. You show up, there's a career waiting for you. There's a pathway to a better life. You know, what we're going to teach you are all these important life skills. We're also going to teach you how to be a good entrepreneur. We're going to connect you with this great alumni network. We're going to connect you with this community here in Arizona. That, again, I love the name Opportunity because, and I can get preachy on this, but Arizona, you know, youngest state in the Great 48, we still are a meritocracy where it doesn't matter who your parents are. It doesn't matter, you know, where you came from. You can come here and you can work hard and all the doors can be open to you. You know, there's a lower, you know, bar to jump in and find success in a state like Arizona because we are this great Western meritocracy, and our universities are part of that. They're part of that promise. And I think we just have to do a good job renewing that. And that's why I love the name. It is all about opportunity. That's what you find when you come to Arizona. That's what I want our story to be, that we are a state full of opportunity. So I think it's exciting.
Gentlemen, I want to go to Peggy, because one of the aspects that we see where there is an opportunity as far as the 5 pillars of progress include education for all. So I want to have her, and any of you can pick up on this one. Accessible and relevant higher education opportunities are one driver in building a stronger workforce. In a state where a higher ed degree is not the norm, are you considering how to support potential first and family students to attend college, tuition support, childcare, living expenses, et cetera? Regent Brewster, obviously, we talked about making sure that there are actual points to be made, return on investment. Does any of that factor into what Peggy's asking?
You know, absolutely does. And again, to kind of ground this point, education is more than just a value. It's a catalyst. From classrooms to research hubs, you know, the universities are generating jobs and the talent and power to grow our economy. But you have to get the students in. And again, when you think about those models for financing, FAFSA, Promise, we have a number of programs, frankly, that are there. And again, part of this is educating the public, especially those that have children in the 6th, 7th, 8th grade, even before they get to high school, on what are those pathways forward that they can talk to their students about and make them comfortable that there is a pathway financially forward for you in these 3 state universities that we have. And again, our push is to work with businesses, to work with, you know, K through 12. We've got to figure out how to bring the mindset that college is reachable for every family through the financial packages we have today established. Yes, can they be funded better? Yes, but they're there, and we need to give folks a real better, I guess, education on what's available. So there is hope that every student realizes by the time they're going through 7th, 8th grade into high school, college is real. College is attainable.
Yeah, I build on that really fast because we just cannot talk about this and not give credit to Dr. Cruz Rivera at NAU and what they've done with the Access to Excellence program, because this is to Peggy's question. This is a program designed to help first-year students who I think their income levels are below 65,000 have access to all the help they need, mandatory relief on fees, mandatory assistance on helping this first generation of students come in. And what I would love to see, one, is that celebrate. I feel like that story is not told enough, and we're all guilty of that. We should be singing the praises of what NAU is doing because it's meeting a need. But to go back to something Jaime said and to pair it with a word that Regent Brewster just used, and that's hope. You know, other states have these hope scholarships. Florida has Bright Futures. You know, Georgia has Hope. There's the Talented 20. These, which is basically a guarantee that if you have a certain GPA and you graduate from a local high school, you get to go to college and you get anywhere from 100% down to 75 or 80% of your tuition covered. And it's 100% merit-based. That's all it is. And that's the best promise we can make. And we don't have that here in Arizona spread wide. The promise was a start to that, and it's the blueprint for it. But I would love to see, this goes to Jaime's early point, I would love to see us get to where we have our Hope Scholarship, that we have a guaranteed commitment to the students and the families who kids put in the work, got the certain level GPA, and they get to go to college at as cheap a rate as possible at our great state universities. That's something that we need to do a better job of here, is getting that funded, finding it outside the general fund. Most states use their lottery. We have such a waterfall already. We'll have to find something new. There's ideas out there. This is something we're all going to be working on and talking about in the future.
Steve, and then one point I'd like to make, and I think those were excellent comments. But one of the things that I think is very important, and I applaud the regents for starting to look into this very aggressively, and also putting some pressure on the universities to look at how they're doing this whole notion of transfer articulation. So that if a student in high school gets college credit or goes to a community college and gets credit, how does that then get applied to the degree that they'll get later on in pursuit of a bachelor's degree? I think we've done a much better job. I think it's easier for students. Again, it makes that pathway much more flexible, and it keeps them from spending a lot of money too, taking courses that they shouldn't have to take again. So we just have to be very thoughtful, but understand that that is an important part of what we're doing here. And again, I applaud the regents for keeping their foot on the gas and making sure that that happens.
And it is.
I want to go to one more question from the audience here, but I really want to come back to this return on investment concept, because there's so much going on. And Jaime, I think your point about making sure we focus on the students and not lose sight of that is really important too. Richard Brewster, not to make this too philosophical, but how do you measure or how do you compare the importance of ROI when it comes to realizing that Arizona is going to get return on investment from the standpoint of economic impact, but also the impact that we have on raising the quality of life for more and more people around the state, as individuals, as families, as communities?
Well, I think what you're going to hear from me and every region is that's our focus. That the citizens of Arizona have to be the ones that realize the return on investment. And again, we can talk about, the board's perspective about what our return on investment is. And again, I've stated it. It's what the public, the citizens of Arizona, feel like they are getting. And again, that comes from, hey, they're seeing increased qualified teachers for our students. They're seeing classrooms with stronger school systems in place to support them. And again, back to healthcare, we're going to see more practitioners, whether it's physicians or health, behavioral health. We're going to have those here in Arizona. Those are the returns I think our citizens are looking for. And again, I always reach out and try to remind folks, it's not whether you have a student that's going to go through the college experience here in the next 5 to 10 years, but it's for the folks that are retired, that have moved from other states here. Those return on investments are just as important to them. And again, just because they don't have a child in the game for going to one of our 3 universities, those outcomes around what these platforms of Arizona, that we're talking about today, those are the returns on investments I think our citizens are looking for.
Yeah. Danny, you want to say anything about that?
No, again, I think this is what we should be focused on. This is what we should be talking about. I do think we have a great ROI in our universities right now, but that story is not that told as well as it could be. You look at some states. I always think of Georgia. Again, states that are growing, states that are doing a good job of economic development. You go to Georgia and you look at a Georgia Tech, and they do this quarterly ROI report. That keeps a track of every student, what the return on investment is for what they've paid for their education, and it pumps out. And I look at it, I'm like, I know we can do that here, and we should do a better job, whether it's through our foundations, working together more. But I love that this Board of Regents is laser focused on ROI, because that's what you need to sell the legislature, and that's really what you need to sell families now at their dining room tables when they're making tough decisions. When I have 3 kids myself, I know Jaime's a dad. We're always thinking about what's going to generate the best future for our child. What decisions can we make to do that? And if you can get a lower cost education and get a high ROI, that's a great selling point. So again, we just have to renew that promise, renew that commitment, steer clear of the political noise and the examples that come out of left or right field on things, and keep talking about what we do really well. And what we do really well in Arizona is training the workforce of the future for every sector of the economy, not semiconductors, healthcare, teachers. I mean, we're being innovative when it comes to childcare and using universities to help solve some of our childcare needs right now. So again, the universities are so often the answer to the problems that we have as a state and the problems that we struggle with growth. And I just want to say this too. I mean, big wins recently on air quality for Arizona and getting the EPA to change their guidance. You know how we got that? Through our universities and through the studies that they do. And we wouldn't be able to do that without them. So these investments that keep our economy going, I mean, our economy would be shut down if we couldn't make a provable point about where our air pollution comes from. So again, what the universities are doing are so relevant and so important. And again, we need to do a better job telling that story.
I think that's a really interesting point, Regent Brewster, because the idea is, and obviously we've talked about this already, there are certain things about the universities that are pointed out that they're doing brilliant things. Then there are also the little bits about, oh, but they did this, or they invited this person on campus, or didn't invite this person, whatever it may be. And yet, without the university system, where would Arizona's economy be?
Well, I would say, Arizona's future depends on the choices we make today. And I think Arizona Opportunity is laying out that roadmap, not just for higher ed, but for economic growth. And again, a couple of things that have been said. The minutia is important, I guess, but things that are either said or not said, speakers that are on campus, not on campus, to these have to be kind of looked by, in some ways to again put the strategy in place to look what's going to drive the overall outcomes for Arizona. And again, it's not that we're not focused on the tactics, but the strategy to get us in so many areas moving forward starts today. Again, you can talk to a lot of folks. If you don't plan for it, you're not going to realize it. And again, things just don't happen. They are planned for, they're invested in, and those returns are monitored along the way. Adjustments are made. And again, to your point, if we do it now, we have a bright future. There's lots of good things coming out of our universities that are driving our state forward. And again, they're at the table in a lot of places people don't realize. And again, I don't want to make it just around budget impact, but it is important. The state needs to invest in higher education. There's no question at a greater level than it's doing today to really hyper drive forward some of the things that are underway and showing proven results, to Danny's point, around mining, around agriculture, around water, air. There are a number of things. I mean, Valley Fever. There are significant wins for the state of Arizona coming out of our universities today that don't probably get the news they need, but they're happening.
So let me, again, I'm going to thread the needle on politics again, guys. I'm going to do my best. But when we talk about some of the federal cuts we're seeing when it comes to National Science Foundation grants or grants that the universities take advantage of to do some of the things we're talking about, Arizona Opportunity is going to try to counter that or support and build on it. But how much, frankly, what can our congressional delegation do? What can others do to say that, hey, Arizona is doing great things at our universities. We don't want to lose some of this funding. I don't know, Danny, Jaime, do you guys have points on that?
I'll jump first and just say, we again need to connect what our universities are doing with the stated goals of this administration. Let's say there's never been a bigger focus, right, on onshoring, reshoring our supply chains. That's a post-COVID thing. And to square that with cuts to universities is a really tough logical challenge. So I give people like Congressman Juan Ciscomani down in District 6 a lot of credit. He's one of our appropriators. He has consistently said, without what U of A is doing in critical minerals and mining, this won't succeed long term. We can't onshore our critical supply chain if we don't invest in mining, invest in our universities. You don't want to be dependent on Southeast Asia for our defense chips. TSMC has to succeed, and TSMC wouldn't be here without ASU and what ASU is doing. So again, the federal funds should be redirected to supporting their mission. I'll make this argument. We in Arizona and our public universities, and even our community colleges, our private universities, all of it are supporting that mission of onshoring, reshoring, training the workforce of the future. And it matters for national security. I think Senator Mark Kelly does a very good job connecting what our universities are producing, how it works with TSMC, Raytheon, everything else, and why it matters for something like national security and economic security. So again, they just have to keep telling that story, and that's how we justify it, and not get caught up in those political distractions about who was invited on campus, who wasn't. And really, again, let's judge just on the outcomes. There was universities all over the country that didn't even host graduations because of how tense that speech got. That didn't happen in Arizona. So again, the Board of Regents, our university presidents, they all deserve a lot of credit for navigating these really, probably not since the 70s, right? Tough political times on campus. They've done such a good job. And again, they get beat up a lot. So let me be one to give them credit. Graduations were canceled. The world went on at these universities. They found a way to move forward. They found a way to meet their promises made to these kids and their families. So again, our university presidents deserve a lot of credit.
I would just say that we also need to take some responsibility ourselves in reaching out to our elected officials and not be um, afraid to say why this is important and why this is going to be critical to the health and quality of life of our state. Sometimes I think, we wait for others to make the case, or we wait for the governor or our congressional delegation. Well, hopefully they'll see the light. Well, that tends to happen when you have a business community that's engaged, and I think we do in our state. And I think we're making a very good case on why our university system is so valuable. I'll give you a great example. Right now, there's a lot of discussion about how the USMCA 2.0 is going to take place. Well, our university system, we've been working very closely with them on getting the kinds of information and data on why we need to have a robust trade structure with Canada and Mexico, and why the North American free trade zones make sense, particularly for Arizona. This is a very important time in our state, that if we become so insular and we don't reach out to particularly our congressional delegation and make that case, then we're just going to hurt ourselves. And that's why it's important that these kinds of forums continue, and that we're very aggressive in making that arguments of why the university system is at the tip of the spear of leading our economy forward.
Steve, I guess
Brewster, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd bring something to the table that, picks up on both what Danny and Jaime are saying. One, you can just bet that the Board of Regents and the university presidents have been talking about not just, ASU's innovation awards, but that innovation and that mindset, believe me, is at NAU and it's at U of A. And Dr. Cruz Rivera and Dr. Garamilla, we are challenging them to be creative, to be innovative, and to move past the given situations today. Not in the sense of move past them, but figure out with the current climate how to work within that structure and to find other ways to bring resources to get grants fulfilled. Again, the game is not over. I'm convinced this is a conversation to what Danny said. I know that Dr. Crow has been in the White House. He has had specific conversations with cabinet members. It's not over, but it's going to be on the universities to figure out those creative, innovative ways to meet the challenge and beat the situation that we have today so that we move forward, not go backwards.
My last question for all of you before we go to sort of a final statement thing. This sort of blends in some of the different questions that have been asked. Arizona Opportunity is obviously focused on the state's public universities, but Regent Brewster, what about how important is it that the state universities are still collaborating a little bit with the community colleges, with private universities in the state? Obviously at the top, as many of us look at it, is ASU, U of A, and AU, but how important is collaboration to make all of this happen?
It's a great question, because when I came to this board, I thought, okay, that's my role as the three universities, and it is. But I'll tell you, in collateral conversations, I have lived that. I grew up here in Arizona. I went to Orangewood Elementary School, Washington High School, Phoenix College, and then Arizona State University. I talk to politicians and I talk about, higher education, certainly as a point. But I will tell you, if it's not for everybody, then what are we doing about lifelong learners? How do we get students out of high school into our community colleges? How do we make our community colleges transfer rates as high as we can make them with any one of our three universities? And I applaud what Danny brought up earlier. NAU is really on the cutting edge of working directly with our community colleges to make sure that pipeline and that energy and effort over the time in that community college translates to coming to one of our universities, if not just NAU. So, technical schools, I always laugh in that conversation. Well, then where are our technical schools? If higher ed isn't the way to go, where is Arizona's technical schools? Where's our investment? It really comes down to, and again, you've got to be a lifelong learner, and we have to instill in our kids the ability to say high school education is good, but it's a stepping stone to the next thing. And the next thing may not be a 4-year university. It may be a 2-year community college. It may be a technical school. But here in Arizona, we have to give that pathway forward to our students, and we have to fund it. And that really is, as much as my role with the Regents is 3 universities, those conversations do not go in any business climate I sit with, any political climate I sit with. It is about moving our high school students through something else beyond high school.
I mean, as we wrap up, what do you think about that collaboration aspect?
Yeah, so when I started out my career, particularly in K-12 policy in Arizona and having served on the regions, I used to think about we need to support quality public schools, but my thinking has evolved a little bit over the years, and that now I believe that we need a system of schools that support a high quality of life for our public. So, and that gives us more opportunities, it gives us more flexibility, and I think the innovations that our universities have shown have proven that. I think they've become very entrepreneurial, very flexible, looking at how do we make sure that at the end of the day, they are essential to our quality of life. I'm one of the few natives that you'll come across. We had to deal with all you interlopers coming into Arizona and taking advantage of our great state. But one of the things, in all seriousness, that I've seen over my many years living in Arizona is that the evolution and the greatness of Arizona goes hand in hand with our university system. I mean, I have zero doubt about that. I mean, as somebody that's a product of our universities, my child was a product of both the undergrad and grad school, and of course K-12. I think that where we've come is because of the investments and the leadership. We just need to build on that. And that's one of the things that I think we need just to remember, that we've done a lot of great things, but the work isn't over. And I think what the Regents are doing in Arizona Opportunity gives us the foundation to build on that.
Kenny?
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, Arizona Opportunity, it kind of answers that question. Built into the plan is the recognition of supporting apprenticeships. And again, we have these models are already working. You know, Drive 48 is probably one of the best ones. Drive 48 is where we train our electric vehicle manufacturers using Central Arizona College. That was done in coordination with some of our universities. We are building, Accelerate 48 now to model clean rooms at some of our community colleges, and engineers and engineering programs from the universities are going to be working in tandem with that to kind of create these tech line workers. So again, the plan recognizes the need to work with all levels of education. And I would say, you know, TSMC is a really good example right now. TSMC is doing outreach to our K-12 system to get high school kids interested in different jobs that they can pursue at TSMC post-graduation. And that's not even the higher ed one. So again, Jaime is right. We are in a new era where from early on now, K through 12, it's recognized you should be thinking about your career. You should be finding what makes you passionate. Try some things out. And I think the universities are recognizing that. It's built into this AZ Opportunity Plan. It's exciting. It's really well thought through. We need to get it funded, and we need to support them. What Arizona looks like right now, make no mistake, there's a lot of credit that could be taken by my organization, Jaime's organization, everyone else. We would not have TSMC without ASU. We would not have half of what's happening with our mines without U of A. I mean, Flagstaff would look completely different without NAU as well. So, I mean, the universities have changed our state for the better and made us a growth state. So again, we would not be where we are without them, and we should support them.
Bruce, we've hit our time limit, but you get 30 seconds to remind people, what's the biggest takeaway about Arizona Opportunity?
Arizona Opportunity is our blueprint for delivering the workforce of tomorrow. It's built on the idea that talent is evenly distributed, but opportunity is not. Arizona's public universities are ready. We serve more than 250,000 students and employ over 30,000 faculty and staff. We're engines of innovation, opportunity, and growth, but we need the tools to compete. We need the tools to compete. Arizona Opportunity is about giving the state the talent advantage it deserves. The choice is ours. We can get everyone to visit Arizona Opportunity. Lots of information out there. I want you to learn more about it and join the conversation and get involved. I appreciate, obviously, these two leaders knowing about Arizona Opportunity, being at the table as we've created it. It deserves more time with more people to really see the value that Arizona Opportunity will deliver for the citizens of Arizona.
And that brings this Arizona Capital Times Morning Scoop to a close. Arizona Opportunity, building Arizona's workforce for a stronger future. Thank you all for watching, and thank you to our great panelists, Greg Brewster, Regent of the Arizona Board of Regents, Danny Seiden, President and CEO of the Arizona Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and Jaime Malera, co-founder and partner of Malera Alvarez. Gentlemen, thank you all. Steve Goldstein, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.